Hi everyone, we're here at Christie's with Rémi Guillemin, who's the head and watch specialist at Christie's Watches. Rémi is going to give us a little bit of insight of the upcoming auction in those very exciting days in Geneva. And he's going to show us a couple of highlights which are very much oriented through institutional houses and big major brands, with a twist in terms of references that you're going to show us.
Exactly. So thank you very much, for being here. It's really a joy to have you in our preview that started today and will last over the weekend before the auction on Monday. So very exciting times indeed for the market. We really, have seen an unparalleled, demand in watches, vintage pieces with differences, things that are basically discovered, through auction houses, or watches that have, of the highest quality, the highest rarity. And the star of our auction really this season would be, I think, for Rolex, the trilogy of Daytonas that we have. So the watches are displayed here, and they're each beautiful in their own way. The watch that you're holding is a very nice and extremely rare Rolex Reference 6264 with very famous today Paul Newman lemon dial. So the very interesting feature about this watch, not only is it extremely rare and extremely coveted, but the watch comes from a great private Rolex collector, who only focused on the best. And the watch actually has a dial color, which turned to brown for the interior of the subdials as well as the outer track. So you have a tonality which became brown. It's a very light brown, and it speaks to many Rolex collectors looking for aesthetics that are really unique.
So it means that the baby sister, the little brother sitting right next to it, has just a slight difference that you can barely notice at the eye, but only the genuine collectors will see and spot, obviously, the difference between the one that we just showed and the second one that you're just about to talk and describe.
So the two watches are very different in the end. They might look similar from afar, but they're actually different references. The watch that you're holding in your hand, in your left hand, is a Rolex Reference 6241 with Paul Newman champagne dial. So it's a reference that's produced at a bit of a higher level in terms of quantity, but that's also extremely rare. And it has a dial which has a champagne hue. It kind of have a very pale yellow color on the dial plate, and on top of that, the subdials are gilt, instead of the watch that we just previously saw, which had subdials which were white. So added to this, it's a different reference. The movement of the Paul Newman lemon dial that we first saw has a movement caliber that is a bit later in the production process of Rolex. And then also being a reference 6264, it's really extremely rare in terms of production to find pieces in yellow gold, especially with Paul Newman lemon dials.
And which one do you think will go higher or will be most coveted?
So the market will decide inevitably. However, it should be the Rolex Reference 6264 with lemon dial, really due to its rarity. It's a very special piece, and it's just breathtaking in terms of aesthetics, with its unique feature. However, the Reference 6241 Paul Newman with champagne dial that we have is one of the most beautiful examples that we've seen and have had the pleasure of offering. And therefore, quality might be the deciding factor, and we're sure it will perform extremely well.
And then to close this trilogy, we need the third watch, which is a bejeweled diamond paved with a cabochon indexes. Can you explain what, maybe you'll hold the feminine version, even though probably a man will probably end up wearing it on its wrist? It's the trend right now.
Exactly. So it's an extremely rare example of a Daytona wristwatch. It's a Reference 6269, and at Christie's, we've only had a handful of opportunities to offer them for sale at auction. in the past. The quality of the watch is definitely extremely high, so that's something that's really really speaks to people who wish to collect these watches. They definitely want to have pristine examples of the reference. And on top of that, it represents really the quest for Rolex to do something different, to try to have a diamond set chronograph at a time, in the 80s, where it wasn't usually common, to see that. So it's really, the great thing about Rolex is that they're able to innovate with their designs while, keeping, a model that's very iconic and that's extremely well.
But Rolex also has become, what we've seen during Watches and Wonders this year, they've become not only good, but excellent and masterwork at creating and gem setting dials and bezels.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. And they're really well famous today for creating iconic models with, gem set timepieces
that are not necessarily oriented for women, and they're just give another touch, another look, and something a little more bold of a classic reference that just collectors would want to seek or look for something slightly different and unusual.
Exactly. And then, of
thank you for this golden trilogy.
With pleasure, my pleasure. And we're very excited, to offer these wristwatches at auction to collectors. So far, although the preview only started this morning, we've had a great volume of collectors who came to the preview, and the comments have been extremely positive. So we're really excited to be at the auction on Monday and to see.
Of course, we'll all be there. We'll all be watching. So now, we can spot here a little common thread in terms of hues. It's very, very warm, very golden. Obviously, we're going to jump into the Audemars Piguet, which is another A series. We've been hearing a lot about the Royal Oak with the upcoming auction this afternoon to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Royal Oak. So can you explain to us first what is an A series and what this particular reference makes that watch so cool and at the same time very bold?
Yeah, so the A series that you mentioned is actually the first design, of the Royal Oak that was made in 1972. This is a reference 5402 BC, so it's actually the white gold version of the reference, that the Royal Oak 5402. So it's extremely rare, where the A series was created in a couple thousand examples. This watch was only made, in around 150 pieces. And the great thing about this watch is that it's number 29, so it's an extremely low number. It comes from a private collector as well, so that's always, what people love. But on top of that, and being made, with a white gold bracelet, white gold case, you have the diamond indexes, and you have a dial which has actually aged and patinated to this kind of gilt brownish tone. And it's actually very, uniform, and it just makes the watch really striking. So,
it's almost as if there was the smoky dials that we've been seeing in a lot of independent watchmakers' dials, and it gives another edge to the grande tapisserie motif that we have in most of the AP references.
Exactly. And it's a beautiful wristwatch, really. Again, it's a watch that every collector deserves to see if they're in Geneva and they have the opportunity to come to the Four Seasons to view our
lot
to
number
see our preview.
149.
Exactly, and it's a great watch, and sure, it will perform extremely well.
Well, more on Monday.
Exactly.
And then what are the last two historical pieces, especially one, I guess we'll keep the Cartier for the end.
Your favorite
my
watch.
favorite. Yeah, my favorite. It's been my favorite for a long time. Yeah.
So we can continue. We have a very, very nice reference 1675 in yellow gold. So it's not a particularly rare reference, but we just chose to show it to you because it deserves, a closer look. It's a watch that comes from the UK, from a collector who loved Rolexes, and he just cherished this watch for a very long time. And you can see it through its condition. You know, the case is absolutely stunning, and on top of that, you know, you still have the little details which are really great. You have the 1675 sticker, you know, that was delivered when the watch was sold.
So it's either he's been very precautious, or he's been very, very careful about not wearing the watch too much, or making sure it stays in perfect condition.
That's it. So, you know, that's really what people love, is being able to see, as you mentioned, you know, references that are well known, you know. However, you know, to find the quality is something different, you know, and it's truly rare to have a watch which is in this condition today. And then, so we can move on to your
my favorite.
To your favorite.
No, but I think
and
it's
a very iconic design.
I think it's also relevant and interesting to speak about a Cartier crash, especially with what happened a couple of days ago. I mean, a Cartier crash in London, especially with the London written on the dial. Will you give us a couple of details in a couple of seconds? It's true that it's not. I mean, yes, it is a collector's watch, but not a lot of people or watch connoisseur would necessarily put their crash into collection within a Patek or Rolex piece. And why do you think, in your own opinion, what happened 3 days ago? Why all of a sudden a price for crash skyrocketed?
So I think, you know, like what we saw was the result, you know, of a few things. You know, you have collectors who are paying more and more attention, you know, on the Cartier crash model. It's an iconic design. There's a great history behind it, you know, and it's a watch that, you know, really has an immense personality, you know, and people are actually very receptive to that, you know. So can
you explain actually how this crash in the end non-symmetrical, which makes the beauty of it, and that's why some people love it and others hate it.
Yeah.
When was the first design created? Who made it? What's the story behind it?
So the first design was actually made in the 60s, and you know the pieces, the case was actually made by hand, you know, and they were made, you know, on very, you know, quite limited occasions, although today it's basically impossible to get them, you know, so definitely the scarcity in pieces available has accentuated, and then, you know, you have a lot of stories about, you know, the origin of the model. Some people would tell you that it was the inspiration from a baignoire, you know, which was damaged, you know, from a Cartier executive maybe that had, you know, an accident with one of his watch, and the watch was remodeled, you know, to what the design that we know today. And some people will tell you as well that there's inspiration from Salvatore Dali, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories behind that watch.
So again, you know, it really adds to the myth, you know, surrounding the wristwatch, the interest, you know, that people have. And the great thing as well is that it speaks to a wide array of collectors. You know, it speaks to watch collectors, but it also speaks to people who love Cartier, who love jewelry, you know, and we actually have
a hybrid model.
Exactly, and we have a great diversity of people who are interested in the model today because they understand that, you know, it kind of set itself as a milestone, and it's now, you know, becoming extremely difficult to acquire these pieces, especially these early pieces with, you know, little variations and, you know, signatures which are more rare than others.
Like the London one.
Exactly, pretty desirable. And then, you know, to continue on what happened, you know, in the last days, you know, a similar example, a Cartier crash with London signature, you know, actually sold for a very high number in the US. Their piece was actually extremely early. You know, it was, I think, one of the first pieces that we know of, you know, in terms of chronology of Cartier crashes that were sold. So it definitely makes it very important. And then, you know, you kind of have to take into account that the watch market is really booming, and you have a lot of people who are entering the market and who are wishing to acquire pieces for their collection. So
the desirability of collectors is broad and broader because a lot of them can't afford the piece that they want, so they'll go into something slightly different, and sometimes with a little more personality or more originality, or just to be a bit different from any others.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the market today basically, and we're extremely happy, you know, to offer a wide array of watches, including many coming from private collections.
I was
which is
going to
always
say
great.
how difficult it is to acquire such interesting and historical pieces in some ways.
So it's a lot of work for sure. You know, it's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of trust as well from our collectors. You know, who trust us to put at auction, you know, their watches and advise them with regards to selling and buying. And also, you know, people who trust us, you know, with the sale of their collections. We have a great collection coming up from the US.
Okay.
You know, with contemporary Patek Philippe. We have a great European collection as well that is, you know, with various brands, you know, vintage as well as modern, and that is spread within our catalog from a private European collector. So. Again, you know, that's a great opportunity for us to show to people who wish to start collecting, or you know, who are already collecting at high levels, to find watches that haven't been in the market for years, and to see them again and have the opportunity to acquire them.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for all those explanations, insights, and technical details. Thank you very much, and good luck for the sale on Monday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We're looking forward to it. And we're looking forward to have you on the first row.
Absolutely, bidding on every single piece.
Exactly.